If you've never paid a visit to the Space Shuttle Atlantis exhibit in Cape Canaveral, then I strongly recommend that you do so at some point in your lifetime. Even this shaky footage that I took while I was on my last visit with my son gives you at least some impression of just how amazing of a machine this was. The Canadarm, completely unable to support itself in our own gravity and yet functioning with such magnificence in low Earth orbit. The massive cargo bay, just all of the details, the amazing engineering that went into constructing this machine that was supposed to be the future of spaceflight when it came to reusability and giving access to LEO to the average individual and not just astronauts. At least that was the idea when Krista McAuliffe boarded the fateful voyage of the Challenger in 1986. And yet, for all of its flaws, the shuttle has proven to be a far superior vehicle than the vehicle that was intended to replace it, the Boeing Starliner. Although the Crew Dragon has performed admirably, this replacement for the space shuttle that was supposed to be reusable was supposed to deliver what the space shuttle failed to do: affordable access to low Earth orbit at a reduced cost and greater efficiency and greater safety has failed miserably time and again. And it's getting to the point to where NASA really needs to be considering alternatives, because Crew Dragon cannot cover all of the different tasks that are necessary for commercial crew. But although commentators like myself have advocated that NASA proceed with a different solution for a commercial crew aside from Crew Dragon and Starliner, namely the Sierra Space Dream Chaser, although I have said this many times, the general opinion has been that Sierra Space is nowhere near close enough to getting this ship human-rated in order to meet our current needs, and that Starliner, for all of its problems, represents our only real solution, no matter how horrible that solution may be. However, just a couple of days ago, things changed, and changed radically. My name is Jordan Wright. I was born in the same year that the human race took its first steps on the surface of another world, and then we promptly betrayed those people's legacy by never going back. But now, over half a century later, there's a new breed of pioneers that are seeking to finish what these people set out to do so long ago. But there is trouble as well. Corrupt contractors who are looking to take advantage of one of the most underfunded departments of the U.S. government and an unsustainable plan that is doomed to cancellation, as the Apollo project was. Something has to change, so it's time for commentators like me to stop being polite and start getting angry. Okay, if you guys want a more detailed explanation of everything that's happened with Starliner, I've made all kinds of videos about it, but here we go really quick. Problem 1, the Atlas rocket, although it functioned perfectly, delivered the Starliner into orbit, and then the Starliner promptly went to the wrong orbit. NASA realized this, tried to communicate with Starliner, and could not communicate with it, and so therefore Starliner had to be brought back down from the wrong orbit, not rendezvousing with the ISS as it was supposed to. During the descent, the Starliner also improperly separated from the service module, something else that could have caused the loss of the spacecraft and the loss of any crew on board had they been there. NASA did an in-depth investigation, found 80 problems or 80 corrective actions that Boeing needed to undertake. They undertook all of these issues, and by the way, all of this started back in 2019, and then after that, they were getting ready to fly the Starliner in August, and there were stuck valves just a few hours prior to launch, so the flow of dinitrogen tetroxide, which is a type of oxidizer, could not flow through the service module of the spacecraft, and this would have caused another cataclysmic failure if this had taken place post-launch. So as a result, the Starliner was brought back, taken off of the Atlas V, and they have yet to determine exactly what the problem was. And so, we're not looking at an unmanned flight of the Starliner until sometime next year, with a crewed launch now delayed until 2023. This has caused an unbelievable number of problems and setbacks for the program. First of all, astronauts have had to be reassigned to different missions. Also, cosmonauts have had to be reassigned to different missions as well, because the whole idea is NASA wants to make sure that both cosmonauts and astronauts can be on the ISS at the same time in case something should go wrong with either Crew Dragon or the Soyuz. However, the failure of Starliner has led to these problems. On top of that, Starliner is supposed to be able to provide reboost to the ISS to keep it in orbit, something that Crew Dragon cannot do. And Starliner, of course, can't do this either because it's not in service. All sorts of problems that this is causing for NASA, which has led to lots of people saying, let's dump it, let's replace it, but people continue to say that this is going to be impractical, but NASA may no longer agree with that point of view. On October 20th, 2021, NASA released the following statement, quote, "The National Aeronautics and Space Administration is hereby soliciting information from potential sources for commercial crew space transportation services to and from the International Space Station," unquote. The request goes on to say, quote, "NASA seeks information from industry regarding its capabilities to transport NASA and international partner astronauts to and from the International Space Station, whether the crew transportation system meets NASA's requirements, whether the crew transportation system has been certified by NASA, if not, the timing of availability of such a system being capable of being certified by NASA, and input on whether commercial crew space transportation services could be considered commercial services as defined in the Federal Acquisition Regulations. If you require a copy of NASA requirements, etc., etc." Here's what this means. NASA is looking for new partners for commercial crew. They want somebody other than Starliner. This request for proposals has a 30-day time limit, which means that there has to be a system already underway, realistically, for any company to provide some sort of solution that NASA would consider. Starliner is an obvious choice, given the fact that Sierra Space has been working for years to get this vehicle human certified and plans to have it human certified by 2026. With additional funding from NASA, who knows what's possible. But this is not the only solution that could be presented. There are other companies that have already presented commercial crew alternatives in the past that could be reconsidered under this proposal. But before we have a look at these competitors, we really need to consider what has gotten NASA to this point. It's not just a matter that Boeing has been going through a lot of teething pains in terms of developing the Starliner. After all this time and all these corrective actions, the fact that Starliner experienced a problem in August that would have caused a cataclysmic failure and a loss of the crew had it occurred after launch is reason enough for NASA to be looking for other alternatives. To lose a crew, especially on the first or second mission of Starliner, would put NASA in a terrible situation, the likes of which they haven't experienced since they lost the Space Shuttle Columbia. Now, just to be clear, this is not an official RFP or request for proposals. Rather, it is a request for information or RFI. Nevertheless, it strongly suggests that NASA is beginning to understand that Starliner may never be ready to carry human crews, at least not safely. And if this is indeed the case, they need to find another solution, and they need to find it quickly. So what might these solutions be? Well, take cover, everybody, because here comes Blue Origin. That's right. During the original commercial crew proposals, Blue Origin put their solution forward, something called a biconic crew capsule. Now, a biconic hull is comprised from two cones and provides a better lift-to-drag ratio for atmospheric flight than a single cone does. But a lot of other details are simply not available. This is an idea of what it might have looked like. Room for 4 passengers. The engines, by the way, would be BE-3 engines, which is the same thing that powers the New Shepard, so Blue Origin wouldn't have to develop a new type of propulsion system for this capsule, and at the same time, it would serve all of the necessary requirements for a vehicle traveling to low Earth orbit and to the ISS. However, this is Blue Origin we're talking about. Now, the most obvious alternative is, of course, the Dream Chaser. It has so many advantages over the Starliner, and it is so incredibly innovative. A space plane rather than a space capsule, capable of transporting an equal amount of cargo, if not more, than Cargo Dragon can, more bulky cargo in its attached shooting star module, and it's also capable of landing on just about any runway on the planet, as opposed to splashing down in the ocean with an oceanic recovery team being required. There are so many pluses to this vehicle. Plus, it can fly on a Falcon 9, it can fly on an Ariane spacecraft such as the Ariane 5, it can also fly on the Vulcan, it can fly on the Atlas 5, it has an enormous amount of versatility, and of course it will be used for cargo missions next year. But Sierra Nevada has been working very hard to get this thing human rated with or without NASA help, and they intend to have a fully functional space station supported by the Dream Chaser by 2026. And as I said before, with NASA funding, how quickly might that date be moved up? Certainly not till 2023, as the Starliner is projected to do, but really, how solid, how confident are we about that 2023 date? And how certain are we that Starliner is going to be safe at the end of the day? Also, it should be remembered that since Dream Chaser is a space plane rather than a space capsule, it isn't subject to the same kinds of G-forces on re-entry. The Crew Dragon experiences at least 4.2 G's worth of force on re-entry, whereas the Dream Chaser only experiences 1.5, which makes it a lot more suitable for sensitive types of scientific experiments or crew members that might be ill or injured and not well suited to high G-forces during re-entry. Lots of advantages with this spacecraft, but is by no means the only solution out there. Here's another example of a low Earth orbit solution that is being proposed right now by a new and emerging company called Exodus. It's called the Clipper, a space plane in every sense of the word. It isn't launched on a rocket like Dream Chaser is, but rather by a detachable first stage that's capable of flying back to the airfield that it launched from. And then the second stage, the second space plane, if you will, takes the cargo or passengers the rest of the way to low Earth orbit. The initial stages of this particular project, or the initial prototypes, are only supposed to go to suborbital space, but the eventual dream in the 2030s is to carry passengers to low Earth orbit. And we're talking 20 passengers. Almost no spacecraft, except for the Starship, is designed to carry that kind of passenger load. And incidentally, Exodus is not some kind of fly-by-night company. The principals have worked at SpaceX, Lockheed Martin, and NASA, amongst others. So these guys are definitely for real. They're working on a small-scale version of the vehicle called the Clipper Pico, which will launch a drone-sized craft to about 10 kilometers to make sure that the technology works. And if the funding and development goes to plan, Pico should fly next year. After that, suborbital flights will be going by 2024 using a Cessna-sized spacecraft that will carry 100 kilograms up to 100 kilometers in altitude. And eventually, as I said before, the Clipper will be able to carry up to 20 passengers by the 2030s. The Clipper is in many ways similar to the British Skylon, using air-breathing engines and rocket engines to achieve a certain speed in the atmosphere and then pure rockets to get into orbit. Although this has a detachable first stage, as I mentioned, that lands back on an airfield. A very innovative idea. I really like the concept, and even though it's in its early stages, NASA should seriously consider this as an alternative. And then there's perhaps the most infamous of all of the competitors when we're talking about the commercial crew program, the Excalibur Almaz, which is officially owned by a United Kingdom company at this point, and it is a very old concept originally designed by the Soviet Union. It was comprised of an orbital manned space station, transport vehicle, and a reusable return vehicle for 3 persons, and a cargo capsule as well. This thing has actually flown several times in the past, unmanned missions of course, but during the time of the Soviet space program, it was proved to be a quite effective spacecraft. The problem is the Excalibur company or the United Kingdom holding company or whoever owns it at this point has gone through a lot of problems, a lot of controversy when it comes to their business practices. This company, Excalibur Limited, has come under lawsuit from a Japanese entrepreneur who supposedly provided $49 million to the company to buy Soviet hardware, which, as the entrepreneur said, turned out to be museum specimens. In other words, vehicles that simply would not fly ever again. So the practices of this company and the legal situation that they're in right now suggest that they're not a very good choice to replace Starliner. Then again, it could be legitimately argued that Starliner is no more prepared to carry humans to orbit than any of these museum specimens, and I think that that could be a very solid argument, really. So where are we right now? Well, we're at a crossroads. NASA has taken the first step to replacing Starliner, to abandoning Boeing's very deeply flawed and glitchy system that may never be safe to carry human beings, and I think they're on the right track. The question is, are the alternatives going to be able to deliver a solution rapidly enough to compete with Starliner, no matter how flawed it may be? And also, the argument can be made that we've already invested all these billions of dollars in Starliner. We should just stay the course no matter how difficult it is, right? Well, we haven't done that with every project in U.S. history. For example, the Zumwalt-class destroyer. We spent $22 billion on that ship, and we only ended up with 3 of them, whereas that $22 billion was supposed to purchase 32 ships before the project was shut down. The U.S. government is no stranger to canceled U.S. projects that cost billions of dollars, and if it's necessary to cancel this flawed spacecraft in order to save human lives, then that's exactly what NASA should do. If you like what I have to say, if you want to see further content like this in the future, you know how to support me. It's all in the description. So until NASA makes the decision to go with another provider, a provider that knows what they're doing, a provider that's going to be able to deliver a solution to get us to the ISS at least as reliably as Crew Dragon, I urge all of you to stay angry about space.